Hello and welcome to the 8th episode of our New South Wales Referees Life Member Series. Today we're joined by a man who has experienced rugby league from many different angles. As a referee and as a coach. He became a life member of our association in 2013. It's Michael Lewis. Welcome, Michael.
Daniel, how are you? Thanks for having me along today.
I'm very well. It's school holidays at the moment, so keeping busy around the house. What about yourself? What are you doing in these uncertain times of COVID-19?
Yeah, probably pretty much the same, Daniel. Keeping busy around the house, certainly taking the opportunity of catching up on a little bit of schoolwork that I need to catch up on. I've been at school for a fair bit of today, just mapping things out with the boss in preparation for next week. But yeah, no, it's probably been a nice opportunity in some respects for my wife and I to see a bit more of each other anyway.
I was going to say, is Tracy pleased with the extra presents around the house?
Look, I think she's happy with the extra presents around the house. But given that being the case, I think she knows when she's had enough for the day, and or when she needs to have a bit of a break. So I allow her to do that without any worries at all.
So how is teaching going at the moment?
Look, it's good, Daniel. It's for somebody who's been in the business for as long as I have. I've found this to be a very, very different challenge from a teaching side of things. I've still got a maths class that I take along each year, and to actually have to deliver all the content online has been a whole new education process for somebody who's been around for as long as myself. So that's been good. It's been good to recharge the batteries and to look at different pedagogy that we're able to use to teach kids. It's also made me really aware, even more so, about how differently kids learn, and fielding all the various questions from them. So I'm looking at it in a very, very positive situation, and looking that it's helping me to widen my horizons a fair bit anyway.
Yeah, speaking from a teaching background myself, it's been an eye-opener for teachers, and I'm sure we've learned a lot along the way, but I also found out a lot about the students. A lot of them actually work quite well, and their strengths are with that independent learning through the distance learning. So it's interesting to see.
Yes.
So you've got your foot in both camps here. You're an assistant principal, and you've got the classroom day-to-day side. How are you going with the overall school management part of this?
Look, that still continues in that respect. So from when it got to the stage where we'd fragmented what was happening at school and had less of an attendance at school, myself and the principal have been in there every day. We've been in there mainly for the fact that to support the staff that have been in there. Naturally enough, we've had to be in various meetings as well. When it all started, we were having day-by-day executive meetings, so to make sure that everything was flowing along without any worries, and that if any new issues came up by way of emails or phone calls, we were able to deal with it. So, haven't missed a day of school yet with all that's taken place with the coronavirus side of things, and I think that's probably been a good thing. It's been good to have. Particularly the executive of the school around there, just so that if anything needed to be done, it was done straight away. So, yeah, it's worked all right. It's kept me pretty busy, that's for sure.
Have you had a chance to have a break?
Yeah, it's been a good break. These 2 weeks, it's been a good break. I would normally spend a holiday period and spend a few days in at school. We usually have fairly strong study privileges and study courses during the school holidays. And I usually run most of those in regards to organising them. So I haven't had to worry about doing that this holiday. So that's been a bit of a break. But had a good chance to have a bit of a breather and just put my feet up and have a bit of a rest anyway.
So you're at Marist College Eastwood, and that's happened in the last couple of years. Interesting story. Correct. I believe your principal, the boss, is actually a former student of yours.
Former student of mine, and who I taught in the 1990s. He was also school captain of the school, and interestingly enough, a very good footballer himself in his own capacity. Play lower grades for North Sydney, and of course he had to put up with me on the field as well. So it almost looks like he couldn't get away from me at some particular stage there. Anyway.
So teaching has given you numerous opportunities throughout your career. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the schools you've been to date and some of the opportunities that you've had to actually travel and teach?
Yeah, look, taught at quite a few schools and had different roles. It's started back in the late 1970s, and I started at a De La Salle school at Ashfield, and spent a number of years there. And from day one, in those days, I stepped into a coordinator's position from the very, very start. Looked after all the physical education side of things in the school, and that resulted in a whole lot of programming and everything taking place. So it was pretty much a learn as you went along in the first year. By the end of that first year, I'd also picked up the sports coordinator's role in the school, which was absolutely brilliant. Loved that role without a worry at all with my like for the sporting side of things. I did that for just on 11 years at Ashfield before I moved out of there, and interestingly enough, went to Eastwood, and I went and taught at Eastwood in the 90s, and went in there very, very much in the pastoral role. Went in as a year 9 and a year 10 coordinator, which was working much more closely with the boys and certainly their parents, and certainly with experts outside of school when the needs took place. That was really, really good, and Eastwood was a place that I really, really enjoyed teaching. And following there, it got to the stage where I decided that I needed a little bit of a change, and then went across to another De La Salle school at Bankstown. It's called La Salle Catholic College, and went in there, and it was a 7 to 10 school, which had was pushing into years 11 and 12. So I went in there as the first senior year coordinator in the place, and did 14 years there in the pastoral role, but also got my first taste of a little bit of the assistant principal's role while I was in there, and enjoyed that immensely, to the point where I ended up doing a bit of additional study outside of on top of school, and got my master's, and from there got the first gig as an assistant principal out at All Saints Senior College out the back of Liverpool at Casula, and did 7 years out there. And it was just in a year 11 and year 12 school with anywhere between 500 and 600 students there. So very, very unique in its own position. So it was a great school to work at. And when the assistant principal's gig came up at Eastwood, it was something that really it sort of hit a point, I suppose, where I thought it'd be nice to go back to Eastwood. So I applied for it, and I'm into my third year there now.
So you've been overseas to teach as well. We've got a picture here in Tanzania.
Yeah, my wife and I did. We like doing a little bit of travel, and sometimes they like you to use up a little bit of long service leave. So a couple of years ago, we decided to go over to Kenya and Tanzania, and basically do a couple of safaris. And while we were in Tanzania, we actually visited one of their schools there. And interestingly enough, we were the only two Australians on that safari, and they took us into a primary classroom, which would have, in the Australian terms of things, would have brought it on a year 5, year 6, year 7 side of things. And they asked a few of us to get up and talk about just what we did and where we came from. So as one of the two Aussies on our safari, I'd said that I was a teacher, and they asked me what I taught, and I told them I taught mathematics and physical education. And at the end of that presentation, I was the last one to speak. They got the students to actually sit down with us and have a bit of a chat to us. And the young group of boys that you see in the photo with me decided to come down and throw a myriad of mathematics questions at me, just to see how good I was. And we sat down for the best part of probably 40 minutes and did a whole lot of mathematics. And it was amazing. These boys, so underprivileged and, struggling with their way of life and everything. And yet the young fellow who's at the front, who's got these amazingly hypnotic eyes, he was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And it just amazed me. So I actually did a little quiz with them and put them all under the quiz side of things. And they loved it. So we had quite a significant amount of time. And then since we've been to there, I've organised a little bit of a fund drive to help the school. And we've done I don't know how many collectively thousands of dollars we spent on it, but we've sent a significant amount of parcels over to this school with sports gear in it, caps, post-it pads, calculators, chalk. They have no chalk, but all chalkboards. And, we still get probably our 3 emails from the school each year just asking how we're going and all that sort of stuff. And it was also a buzz for Tracy, because Tracy works with, she's before and after school care with her job, and also has a dancing background. And the girls, once they knew that she was into the dancing side of things, she, the 45 minutes that she had with them, she probably went through the best part of 4 or 5 dance routines with them before they actually sang their national anthem for us. So that's probably one of the most telling situations that I've met in my teaching career. And it's a story that I always tell the boys at school when they feel like things are going horribly wrong and, that they're feeling very, very overwhelmed with things. I often relate the story of what I witnessed in Tanzania.
Yeah, I know I'm biased, but it just goes to show how enriching and fulfilling experiences you can have as a teacher.
The many, many enriching experiences that I've had in the many years that I've taught, Daniel, would we could fill a textbook with them without any worries at all.
All right, let's move along to your on-field career as a referee. So let's go all the way back to the beginning.
On so I can see a bit better. That's
right.
A bit better.
So you joined Parramatta Referees in the off-season of 1986, I believe, and then you started refereeing in 1987. How did this come about, and why did you choose to take up the whistle at the time?
Well, I was just before I looked at the refereeing side of things, I was still playing in the Parramatta A grade competition, and it was the case where I played most of my football with Guildford, and of course, in many, many A-grade games, I had a referee who I don't know that I would call the phrase clashed with, but whom I certainly pushed to the limit. He actually pushed me to the limit. So Ian Parnaby, when it got to the stage where we had decided that I was going to have my last year of football, which in fact was with Marylands, he basically said to me, "Why don't you look at the refereeing side of things?" And I actually thought he was having a go at me, given the fact that I was a fairly painful individual on a football field in the hooking role, and spent many, many, many minutes in the sin bin when Ian had to get rid of me off the park. And I think it got to the stage where I'd been involved in footy for such a long time. I thought, well, I gave it plenty of thought. And then one day Ian and I sat down and spoke, and I was actually teaching sport and leisure-related careers at school to Year 11 boys. And he talked about the fact of, in the programming that I was doing, why didn't I include getting the boys a referee's ticket if they are interested? And so a great idea. I knew Ian was a teacher and a principal, and I thought, well, great idea, I'd do that. So I did that and actually got a significant number of boys, particularly at Ashfield, to get their referees' tickets. And when it got to that stage, and I sort of said to Ian, well, these boys are being tested on a particular day, he said, well, why don't you go and do it yourself? So I did. I went and sat for my ticket with Cole Pearce and Carl Gilchrist, and it's probably one of the most, I suppose, challenging times where I was questioned by somebody about the rules of the game by Cole Pearce. And, from there I got my ticket, and in further talks with Ian, started picking up a whistle in Parramatta that following year. And I still remember my first trial that I refereed in Para at Seven Hills at International Park. Ian had given me this purple jersey to wear, and my goodness gracious me, I stood out like a neon light on the park, much to my embarrassment, and I swore I'd never wear that colour ever again in anything that I wore. So yeah, it was very, very much due, I think, probably to the relationship that I have and have had with Ian Parnaby, that I took up his challenge to move into the refereeing ranks.
I wonder why you two clashed originally on the field. It's not that you or he are stubborn.
No, probably not. No, and there was no question about the fact that I stood my ground over many things in that respect. So and we got to know each other, and I think from there we became very, very good friends. So I really value that part of how we got to meet each other and know each other very, very well.
So you had a quick but successful rise through the Parramatta district. In your first year, I think you refereed in under 13s, and then you had 16-1 grand finals in a row, which is quite a good game in the Parramatta district. Can you talk to a bit about those experiences in Parramatta?
Yeah, look, enjoyed the refereeing of the junior league without a question about it at all. I suppose being involved with the junior league for quite a while, you get to know quite a lot of the people. So, there was never, ever a situation where you go along to a game and not know somebody there. So, enjoyed my refereeing incredibly. Enjoyed the simple fact of how much fitness it provided me with. I remember coming home on a Saturday afternoon after refereeing 7 games. And, I'd come home here and I'd sit down in the lounge and just crash because I was exhausted from the amount of games that I'd done. Then, of course, you're back up again on Sundays, So I enjoyed that immensely. Got to know so many people in that time. Got to, throughout everything, I always like to, I suppose, target somebody who I believe is somebody that I could, connect with, who I can talk to, who I can relate to, who I don't mind getting a hard time off if I've done something that's not right, wrong, or whatever the case is, who can put me in my place. And I certainly think there's been probably a handful of guys out of that Parramatta side of things that have been able to do that with me. And I sit back and think of a couple of them who have sat me on my backside on a number of occasions when they've said that, no, the way that you've handled that just wasn't good. Yep. And it was probably good along the way for me to witness that and experience that.
Yeah. So you refereed the Jersey Flegg Grand Final in 1990. So you're the first recipient of the Frank Walsh Trophy. Now, that's a little bit different these days. That goes to the SG Ball referee. So you get graded from here. You're graded member number 791. Can you tell us a bit about your story now coming into grade up until the time before you make your first grade career debut? Sorry.
Still remember that Saturday afternoon at Parramatta Stadium where I refereed that grand final, and such a good game of football that I was just stoked with it. I was also very, very, very concerned because I had a very, very pregnant wife at home at that stage, and really, thinking about just how she was. And in those particular days, you didn't have too many mobile phones walking around with you either. So to actually get home and to get a phone call from Dennis Braybrook to pass on the information that I'd been graded as of that afternoon, and that I would be expected down at Henson Park during the week to actually attend training for the first time, and how that would take place. He said to me that I'd find that I would be doing my first few games on a touchline just to see what it's like. And I still remember my first 2 games that I did have in grade on the touchline. Boy, oh boy, what an experience one of them was. So, and then joining in and joining those training sessions down at Henson Park, some of the hardest work that I've probably done in a long time. And yet I definitely remember, the fact of being able to walk in there and meeting up with guys who had to put up with me on the football field when I was playing, because I'd played a little bit of grade with Parramatta as well. And from that side of things, I think to be so well welcomed by all and sundry was fantastic. So I still have such good memories of coming home and sitting down with Tracy and saying, wow, I'll be back there, on Thursday night or whatever night it was, without a problem at all, because I've enjoyed the start to this side of things without a worry at all,
Yep. So your first grade debut as a referee comes in round 2 of 1994. It was in a match between Canberra and South Sydney Rabbitohs at Bruce Stadium in Canberra. What are your memories leading up to the match, the week leading up to it, and then the match itself? It must have been exciting to start off with a team full of names, including Mullins, Meninga, Daly, Stewart, Walters, Ferner.
Amazing, Daniel. These are guys that I'd sat back and watched for quite a while, and it was quite ironic because I'm just trying to think of the front rower's name that were played for for Canberra in those days. Paul.
Osborne.
Sorry. Paul Osborne. Sorry, yeah. How silly of me. I'd known Paul quite well because he had gone to school, into a Catholic school, and had played in for that other school in a competition against our boys on a regular occasion. So I'd known Paul quite well. So to actually go down to Canberra on that Friday night and to referee that game, I'm not going to I wouldn't hide the fact I was as nervous can be, given the fact of who was on that park at that stage. I'd also known Paul Mellor quite well, and he was on the wing for South Sydney, and I'd known him because he was involved in that same sporting competition. So there are a few players there that I did know from that side of things, but I even remember, the simple fact of talking to my boss at school and saying, well, I've got to go down to Canberra on this Friday afternoon. Is that okay? And he had a very, very strong rugby union background, and he was only too happy to assist. I remember the game so vividly, and running out there on a Friday night, and I was just in awe of these guys around me. But as we all probably know and all probably realise, the moment you blow that whistle and you take your first few steps and run down field and see that first bit of impact that's going to take place, I think probably the nerves jumped out and had gone by that stage, and I just slipped into what my normal repertoire was as a referee. And on that night, it's a game that I remember vividly. It's a game which actually I had a birthday not long ago, and both my kids walked in on my birthday and presented me with a hard drive that had as many videos that they had found in the house of every one of my first grade games on it where I still had here. And of course, the first game on there is the game down in Canberra, and I've been through that game now and watched it fully, even before I'd been in contact with you. And it was just amazing sitting back and watching that game. And I still remember that Friday night going out for dinner, with the team and also my assessor down there and talking about the whole experience. And yeah, it's something that I remember vividly and cherish with a great deal of pride. That's for sure.
We'll see some footage in a moment, but am I correct in saying earlier, maybe a month or two earlier, you had the Tooheys Challenge Cup game?
Yep, correct.
On TV with Canberra and the Gold Coast. That must have been a good grounding for the experiences to come.
It was a really good experience. It was a stinking hot night, and from that side of things, a really good experience as well. So enjoyed that immensely as well.
Yeah. So who were some of the mentors or people you looked up to coming through Parramatta and then coming through the graded ranks?
That's a really good question. I've sort of thought about that over the last couple of days. Look, I think going into the junior league side of things, he may be embarrassed by me saying it or not, but as I said a bit earlier, I couldn't fault the way that I was able to communicate and talk to Ian Parnaby, and I super appreciated that. Probably the person who was the biggest critic and who'd get on my back and really talk to me about the game in a great deal of depth when I was refereeing was Kevin Jeffs. And I really admired any time that Kevin came and spoke to me at any stage in the junior league side of things, or even as I pushed into that junior rep season. If Kevin was around to have a look at something, it didn't matter what he had to say to me. I sat back with open ears and listened to him because I valued what he said so very, very much. And he was an amazing coach of referees, in my opinion. So I didn't have any concerns at all listening to him in that regards. As I pushed into the junior rep side of things and the grade side of things, there's probably a few names that crop out. Les Matthews, again, that same sort of person who I never ever minded what Les said to me. I always listened with with a very, very open attitude when Les had something to say to me in respect to the games that I refereed. As I pushed into grade, probably three names hang out most in regards to the guys who I really sounded out for, a lot of talk. If I was able to sit down and look at one of my games with one of them, I did without any question about it at all. One of those guys was Dennis Fagarino, and Spags I always found it very easy to talk about it. Did we have our arguments, our disagreements? My God, goodness gracious me, yes. I remember arguing with him about the benefits referees doing push-ups on Lidcombe Oval. And, being a physical education teacher, I couldn't understand why we were doing push-ups as part of our training. So, but we could discuss that without a worry at all. I valued that. Early in my refereeing career, I was very fortunate to have John Gosha as my mentor, and again, another man with so much experience, and I could always go to Gosha and ask him anything, and he would provide me with a whole stack of feedback. And the other person who I remember really vividly helping me stacks was Barry Barnes. Yeah. Barry, who didn't live too far away from Greystanes here, and Barry would invite me over to his place, and we'd sit down and break my game down really, really vividly, even to the point where I remember him being in WA, and I had refereed a game in Western Australia between Manly and the Western Reds, and Barry was over in WA at that stage, and I was really appreciated the fact I was able to grab a bit of his time after the game and just break the game down in respect to a few matters from it. So I probably think they're the guys who had a significant role. And then, as I've worn down further and further about things, the person who I've talked a lot about in regards to the refereeing side of things, not just refereeing in general, but the coaching and everything, is Pete Filmer, and we still talk about that hot range of stuff to this day.
Yep. So you mentioned travelling across to Perth. Throughout your first grade career, you built up as many frequent flyers as anybody else could claim to in refereeing. Looking through your list of matches, you virtually had permanent accommodation on the Gold Coast and places like Perth and Brisbane. Did you enjoy this travelling aspect of refereeing?
Look, at that stage, I was enjoying my refereeing so much. So to get the experience of travelling to any of those places in Australia was amazing. Always mindful of the fact that I had a very, very young family at home at that stage, and I still remember one afternoon when I had being down in Canberra, and I got a phone call from Tracy that our daughter had been admitted to hospital, and it was about probably 10 minutes before I was about to go on the park. Yeah. And from that side of things, that was always a little bit difficult and always something that sat around in my mind. And I always made sure that I rang Tracy at the conclusion of each of those games. But look, it gave me the opportunity to sound out again, a lot of people. I still remember sitting on a plane, flying up to the Gold Coast, and we had Lewis sitting next to Lewis. So I got the opportunity of sitting next to Wally Lewis, and to sit down and listen to him talk about it. And he was still playing at that stage, just to pick his brain and to suss out football, totally valuable experience. Even going over to WA, the current CEO of the Bulldogs, Andrew Hill, was over in WA at stage there, and Hilly and I had known each other for a long time. And to be able to talk to Hilly about the football side of things when I'd gone over to WA was great. I was never backward in coming forward in sussing out the people that I really found could give me an insight to the game. Yep. And help my knowledge, help my practices, help me as a referee, help me as a coach, all of those sort of things,
Yep. So I just touched on the travel. You're a teacher by trade. How did you find the balance between work, family, and refereeing in a time before full-time referees?
It's a lot, Daniel. It was something that required a very understanding wife, okay, who understood that I was had a very very strong sporting background,
Yep.
and there's no question about the fact that the Lewis family are very well from our side of things,
Yep.
is very very heavily involved in sport, Tracy included, and so Trace understood a lot of that and was very understanding of it. The difficult times was when there were two children on the way, and when in fact she was pregnant and all that sort of stuff. That was always a bit of a difficult time, but we looked after each other from that side of things. School-wise, I was very lucky, very very lucky. The two schools that I taught at during that time when I was refereeing, I had two amazing bosses who loved their footy. One who was an ex-rugby league referee, and they understood without any problems at all. The deal was, because I had a leadership position at those days in both of those schools, one, my classes were always to be very, very well organised, and they were. And secondly to that, because I was very much in the pastoral role side of things, it was to always make sure that, that there were people on board who knew the kids who were concerns, and that they were always, looked after and ready to be cared for if something came up of any sort. So always made sure that was the case. And, to the main, I can't remember too many times where there was a need to walk back into school on a Monday and walk in and talk to the boss or to a year coordinator or a head of a department and, have a really, really major concern blow up along the way. So I'd like to think that that's probably one of my strongest points, in that my organisation was pretty strong around that side of things anyway.
So do you think your experiences as a teacher helped shape your style of refereeing, with some of these traits transferring across the two pursuits?
No question about it at all. Okay, walking out into a yard where you've looked after a year 10 bunch of kids, and you walk out into the yard, and all of a sudden you've got 160 kids in the yard, and you've got to make sure they're doing the right thing and all that sort of stuff. You develop skills that help you along the way, and I think a lot of those skills have been carried over into the refereeing side of things. Although I must admit, I mentioned Andrew Hill a little bit earlier, and Hilly always said one thing to me that stuck in my head for a long, long time, and it's that doesn't matter if it's footballers, doesn't matter if it's referees, doesn't matter if it's your kids at school. Sometimes to say anything more to them of a major tone of 3 points is probably too much, because somebody will lose what you've got to say. So I've tried to stick to that as a philosophy that I've used myself in my teaching side of things, but also my involvement in sport in whatever way, shape or form it's been there. So, but yeah, look, no question about it, the way that you deal with people in the teaching side of things, allowed me to have a stronger idea of just how to work and deal with people on the park.
So with that in mind, what were your ultimate strengths as a referee?
I think I had a good understanding of the rules, and I think that for any referee is the core of where you've got to stand. And I coached that way when I was in charge of looking after the junior rep squad. That it was really important that the guys all knew the rules so very, very well. I think also I look at the game, and I think that probably the understanding that my dad gave me of rugby league held me in good stead in respect to the reading of the game. He played first grade for the Roosters, and he had an amazing ability to be able to break a game down, but also break a player's game down. And I still remember two very, very well-known first-grade coaches who Dad played with, Terry Fernley and Jack Gibson.
Yep.
At times when I was able to talk to them, they said that Dad had such an amazing ability to break a game down with his knowledge of the game, probably also to break players down on the field. And Dad pushed a lot of that onto me when we used to sit down and look at games, or when he took me to a game as a young kid. and he'd had me sitting down watching Ken Thornett playing fullback for Parramatta, and he'd showed me just how Ken Thornett had played and how he'd line himself up, etc., etc. So I really valued and appreciated the fact that my old man was able to impart that sort of knowledge onto me. You know, God rest his soul, before he got very, very ill, nothing that Michael Stone, a Dennis Baggerino, a John Yard, any of those guys could tell me about my game, okay, would be as blunt or as downright as Dad could pull my own game apart. And he wasn't there. He was never a referee. The referees would have called him one of the biggest pains in the necks on the world, which is probably where I got a bit of it from, you know. So his knowledge to teach me and help me along the way, I find that very, very invaluable.
So looking back on your on-field career, is there a game or an experience that stands out as a highlight for yourself?
Yeah, look, there are probably a few games that I look at with the fondest of memories. Certainly that first game down in Canberra, never ever forgotten it, and I believe it was one of the highlights of my career. To this very day, I still get questioned about a game between Souths and the Roosters at the football stadium, where I had to send off a fellow for a dangerous tackle. And
is that Driscoll?
It was, okay, and I've still got the clip in a scrapbook that I've got about it. And anytime I bump into Andrew Voss, it's the very, very first thing he reminds me of, up until we had the send off last year of a lifting tackle. And Voss has rubbed that in with a fair bit of venom without any worries at all. There's also a few other games I remember, but two of them are schoolboy games that I did with the Commonwealth Bank Cup. And they've actually both involved, strangely enough, my own school where I went to school. I went to Parramatta Marist. And I still believe the best schoolboy game I ever refereed or had something to be a part of was a game between Parramatta Marist and St Greg's Campbelltown at Leichhardt Oval. And the level of football in that game was nothing short of outstanding. Not a lot of names there that went on and played first grade. You know, there was a Kalis, etc., Heckenbergs who played first grade, etc. But my goodness me, I was able to sit back and look at some of those games and think to myself, gee whiz, they are just amazing. So they're probably the main games that hang out. I'm still going through that hard drive that my kids gave me for my birthday and still looking at games now, and you know, you're getting fond memories along the way that crop up out of those.
Yeah, I might have to pinch that off you sometime to have a look.
Oh, it's easy. It's right here. It's no worries at all.
So your last game in first grade came in round 14 of 1996 here at Parramatta Stadium. I've got it in the background. It was between the then named Sydney Tigers and St George Dragons. Can you tell us a little bit about that game and about the conclusion of your career?
Yeah, look, that game was going okay in many respects. It was a very tough game. There's no question about that, and a lot of them were in those days for many of us. And it got to the stage in that game where there is one decision that will be remembered from that game, and which was very, very much in the paper the next day, that where a kick had gone downfield and a fellow in an offside position had got the ball and, naturally enough, gone in and scored a try. And unfortunately, he was in an offside position. And being the head referee, you make those decisions yourself. And I made the wrong decision on that particular day. And unfortunately, it was the radio game on that particular Sunday afternoon. And I had Tracy and two young kids sitting at home here listening to that game. And the controversy after the game, Daniel, was quite substantial. To the point where it was ended up being my last first grade game. Sorry, go on.
So you continued to referee though the next year. You took part in the Sevens in 1997.
Yep.
So
the game has some very, very strong memories. You being a school teacher yourself, walking into school on Monday, you just get smashed, absolutely smashed. Not only by the kids, but teachers who barrack for the team that got beaten on the day, and I got absolutely smashed from that side of things. I think probably the most disturbing part of it was the attention that both the children got, both Samantha and Mitchell, going to school on that Monday, and the attention that they both got from the whole school side of things, to the point where Samantha was pretty solid in that respect. Luckily, going to a girls' school, she didn't get knocked around too much, but Mitchell was fairly heavily smashed around at school with what had taken place that afternoon. And I think probably all of that, for I guess the best part of 4 weeks, had a really serious impact on how I felt about my refereeing. And it got to the stage where the next 3 games that I did in reserve grade, it's probably 3 games that I didn't enjoy refereeing because I was carrying a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. And then I had a reserve grade game at Parramatta Stadium on a Saturday night. And I went up and sat up in the stand, and luckily I sat next to our assessor that particular night. It was a fellow who the Parramatta guys will remember very, very well, but also most guys of my vintage in the grade side of things, a fellow by the name of John Yard.
Yep.
And Yardy said to me on that particular night, he said, "You are an angry ant at the present moment, aren't you?" And he wasn't too far short of the mark. And he said to me, "You know what?" He said, "You can't change the way things have basically taken place, but," he said, "you can still take a great deal of pride in your refereeing." So he said, "Have a think about that before you go out on the field tonight, and let that sort of resonate in your brain and see how it affects your game." And it was probably the best bit of advice I could have got at that particular stage, because after that stage, or after that particular point, I don't think there were too many games that I walked into with a bit of a chip on my shoulder. And I enjoyed my refereeing and enjoyed the refereeing right up to until I finished my active career.
So you just mentioned before the kids, they were of school age, so still quite young, but of school age. Was that a concern for you at that time when you were up in the spotlight week to week, that there may be ramifications for them at school with their mates or their peers?
It didn't really make a huge amount of difference from that side of things. Only if something, if you know that your name had come up on the weekend for something that might have happened in a game where there was a bit of controversy. As I said, it probably didn't impact Sue so much heavily on Samantha from that side of things, going to a girls' school. But Mitchell, with one, his primary school days, and two, his fact when he was in the secondary side of things, people had a bit of an idea who he was and all that sort of stuff. So he got it. Mitchell quite well, Daniel, and Mitchell could look after himself, and he did without too many worries. Anyway,
he certainly can. So, like many other referees of your era, you moved into the video box post your on-field career. How did this come about, and what was it like to experience the game from a different angle?
I was basically asked if I was keen to pick up the role of the video referee, and I saw it as being a good opportunity of remaining heavily in the game and having an impact on things. So I was very, very quick to accept the offer, and in the main enjoyed the experience.
So since your days as an on-field referee, you've actually coached teams in Parramatta and the Catholic colleges. Can you tell us a bit about your experiences coaching football teams and how you got into this?
Yeah, started when my first year of teaching at De La Salle Ashfield. The sports coordinator of that very first year said to me, we've got a pretty good under-13 side here at school, and I think you should coach them. And I was still playing in those days. And I coached that under-13 side, and it was the first rugby league team that I had coached. And of course, we made it through to the grand final in the schoolboys competition. Got towed up big time in the grand final, but it was my first experience of it. The year after, I stepped into the sports coordinator's role at school, and but that guy who was the sports coordinator, I still taught with him. And he sort of said to me, "Look, we think you should step in and coach the first grade side here at Ashfield. Our first grade sides get smashed substantially in the competition, and we think you should coach them. And for my remaining years at Ashfield, I coached those guys. While I was also at Ashfield, there was a fellow who was teaching at one of the other schools who sounded me out about having my first engagement with New South Wales Combined Catholic Colleges. And I jumped on board and applied for and filled the positions of trainers for a few of our under-18s teams, and got to meet some very, very good coaches along the way. Peter Mulholland, who's the recruitment manager of the Canberra Raiders, is one person who really significantly hangs out there, because I went to Western Australia with Skull for an Australian Schoolboys Championships, and just amazing being part of that whole situation, So I did that for a few years, and for as long as I was able to with the arrangement. And then the refereeing side of things and everything got a bit heavy, and I stood down from the CCC side of things. As you can see, as you know, I did a bit of coaching there at Parramatta, and coached. I did the assistant coaching side of things with SG Ball for a few years, when we did pretty well, and then got the head coach's job there for Harold Matthews, where we won the competition, and that was an amazing experience and a half. And I sit back in awe of the boys that I had in that side, and what amazing footballers they were, and yet how many of them didn't go on with their footballing careers. As it got down the track, and when it got to the stage where I'd retired from my active refereeing, I thought it might be handy to go back into the CCC side of things. So started off by applying for the 15s job, and took a 15s team away up to Queensland, and we did all right up there, but met two very, very strong Queensland teams, and then very fortunately got a gig in with the 18s, and did 3 years as the 18s coach. And as you can see, the team that's on the screen at the present moment won the Australian Schoolboys Championship after being smashed on the first day by 54-6 by Queensland. And there's still quite a few guys in that side that are running around doing a bit of football at the present moment, including a very, very young Mitchell Moses sitting in the front down there. And there are some other significant names there. Taz Batiri still running around for Les Catalans over there in the English competition, as is Leilani Latu. So
Pat O'Hanlon used to play first grade.
Sorry?
Pat O'Hanlon.
Yeah, Paddy O'Hanlon. So, there's plenty there. So, and that was a really, really valuable experience. And good part about that was we all know what Pete Burke was like in his training of our grade squad. Had Burkey as a trainer, and to have him there was with his vast knowledge of refereeing, but also his dedication to the game was absolutely amazing. It was a very, very valuable experience, and I value the fact I've got two Parramatta jerseys and a CCC jersey up here behind me on the wall that have led to premierships, and I still savour those moments to the day. And there's one game in particular that if I'm having a really crappy day at school or anywhere, I get the disc out, I put the game on, and it's one of those grand finals, and it brightens my spirit up without any worries at all.
So back in the refereeing circle, you had success as both junior reps head coach and as a coach on the grade squad. How did you find coaching referees compared to coaching players? Were there similarities and differences between the two groups?
Look, they're similarities, yes. Differences, yes. Very, very much so. With the from the refereeing side of things, there's so many different personalities. There's so many different, ways that you can teach a referee how to referee, or help a referee how to referee. Now that has some correlation with the teaching side of things. Yep. With the footy side of things, you're looking very, very much at the individual player side of things, but also how they fit into the team situation. And of course, you're dealing with a squad on the park of 17 players, and they all have to fit into that jigsaw puzzle very, very significantly. I suppose I carried a philosophy through with me coaching-wise that with the referees, that if the referees had some sort of an idea of what players were thinking, how players were coached, and what was happening on the ground with the coaching side of things, it can only help their knowledge of their game, of the game, and therefore hopefully have a positive impact on how they see and read a game of football. And I think that's probably the core of where my coaching of the referees has always existed. I've always, combined both the referee side of things and the coaching side of things, and thought they bounce off each other and help each other very, very vividly anyway.
Your contributions to our association were recognised in 2013 when you became a life member. What recollections do you have of the night, and I suppose what did this recognition mean to you?
I was in awe. I look at how many people who have received the position of life membership, and I look at those people, and I think to myself, so many of them are such well-known people in our sport. So to actually receive that life membership, I think there's probably only 4 or 5 people who I've really conveyed to how much it's actually meant to me. Tracy was one of them. Both kids know the depth to which the importance is. On that night when I got that life membership, a guy who I coached with at Parramatta and who I've had a very, very long friendship with was able to come on that night as one of my guests, and to have him there at that particular night as part of that is something that I'll always remember. The other aspect, the other side of things is, unfortunately, Dad had passed away by that stage, so I wasn't fortunate enough to have Dad there, but I was lucky enough to have Mum at that particular night. And to this day forth, I still find that I still rate that as probably one of the highlights that I can remember from the refereeing side of things, that I was actually able to have Mum there on that particular night, give me my life membership, will be part of that life membership presentation. So, yeah, a night that I will not forget for a long time, a blazer upstairs that I look after with a great deal of respect, and it's a position that I honour greatly.
So since being awarded life membership, you've continued to serve the association, and in 2016 you received some further recognition with the formerly known George and Amy Hanson Award, now known as the Winton Award. What did this further recognition mean to you?
Look, Daniel, I think any time that you're recognised, in an association of our size, and you're recognised to receive one of those perpetual and major awards, it means that people have sort of sat back, I suppose, and looked at what your contributions are. I'm probably one of those people who don't deal with a lot of accolades very, very well. I probably don't like people coming up to me and congratulating and whatever the case is. But I think to be awarded that in front of such a strong group of people, and it's an honour which I hold very, very highly, and take very, very strong consideration for that. At the background there, people are noticing what you do and what you give back to the game, and I hold that as being very special anyway.
Yeah. So you just mentioned you don't like the spotlight. You're known by many as a man who just goes about his business without drawing too much attention to yourself, a hard worker who achieves excellent results. Why do you think this is?
I think I've been the same throughout everything. From a young child, at school, in going into sport, as a young kid, I was always either in a swimming pool or on a football field or a cricket field or whatever the case was. So sport has always been something so very, very prominent in my life. And I suppose when I'm involved in something, I'm given a job to do. So I go about that. I take great pride in what I do, how I do it. And from that side of things, I suppose I don't expect that I need to be given those accolades because it's part of what I deem as being my responsibility. So I tend to get on with things, and I tend to try and stay away from the accolade side of things because, it probably doesn't sit easily with me.
Yep.
I can't probably say why, but I just see, if I'm coaching, I'm coaching.
Yeah.
Go and do your job. If you're coaching referees, do your job. If I'm in the classroom teaching a Year 11 maths class, I teach my Year 11 maths class. So that's what I'm in those roles for. Obviously, I have some level of expertise in there, so go and do it.
Yeah. So you mentioned before that I have a bit of a connection with your son, Mitchell. I can remember him telling me many stories at Parramatta trainings about you falling asleep on the couch late of a weeknight, just absolutely exhausted, juggling so many hats. How did you go about being organised and being prepared to fulfil so many commitments and responsibilities?
In respect to everything I do, I make sure family is the highest priority.
Yep.
And I'd like to think that during that time, I made sure, particularly when the kids were very young, that I made sure that Tracy was always in a position where she was okay, everything was all right, and whether it was that I was refereeing locally here, excuse me, either in the Sydney metropolitan area, or if I was refereeing interstate or overseas, that she had people around her who were able to look after and be there and make sure she was okay. My family were close by at that stage, and they were only 10 minutes away from Greystanes. Not so much her family, but they were always happy to help and sort things out from that side of things. So I think, in general, just the simple fact that we had the home side of things organised, that was the base, and that put me at a great deal of ease to know that was taken care of. Teaching-wise, I always kept in touch with my principal and said, look, this is what I've got on my plate. He always knew, or she always knew in that case, what I had on my plate for that particular year. And I always sounded out whether there was any opposition or problems or issues with that being the case. And I have to say that every boss I've worked for has been more than supportive from that side of things and helped me out in regards to everything.
I think they're excellent points. Having that stability can give you that ease of mind, and also having those open communication channels. I think if you can't just guess that people know what's going on, you have to tell people so everyone's on the same page.
Correct, agree. And yeah, look, it did get to the stage where I'd be absolutely exhausted on a lounge here on a Saturday night. I can remember lots and lots of Saturday nights or even Sunday nights, being in bed at 8:30 and it was being exhausted after the weekend, but thoroughly happy with the fact that the way that the weekend had gone anyway.
Yep. So amongst all your pursuits, you still found time to give back to Parramatta as a referee's coach. I might combine my next question with that. You're still match day assessing. How did you find giving feedback to the referees at the grassroots compared to those at the top echelons of the game? Was there a difference in the way you delivered the feedback based on, I suppose, the clientele?
Look, from a principle of coaching, I think it starts off as a no. I think that every referee, irrespective of what they're refereeing, has to have a series of core skills that allows them to go out. Doesn't matter if you're refereeing under sevens at your local ground or if in fact you're refereeing Jersey Flag or NRL. I think there needs to be a core set of skills there that you have that holds you in good stead. Now, there's no question about the fact that as you go further along the ranks, those skills become very, very much part of your delivery and part of your persona in that side of things. And then it's a matter of working with aspects of the game that you need to work on. With working with your young referees or your referees in your junior league, I've always still believe that the simple fact of having those core principles and being able to have them as your platform is the strongest thing that you can do. So it's a sliding scale. If you're going into the junior league, you're looking at the fact that those core skills are there, and if they're not, how do you help in respect to coaching them? Once you go into those higher ranks, you make sure that those core skills are there strongly for that delivery, and then you look at what the different aspects of the game are that need to take that referee to the next level or make them a better referee.
Yep. So you've mentioned family all throughout this chat, and I think that's vitally important that you're a family man, and that's excellent to see. Your son Mitchell has very much followed in your footsteps in terms of rugby league. He's had a crack at refereeing, and he's also got into the coaching side. You must be very proud of him as a person.
Yeah, I'm proud of both of our kids from that side of things. In respect to how Mitchell's gone about mapping out his career to this particular point, couldn't be prouder at this stage, and the experiences that we've had in the game together to this point have been absolutely fantastic. So yeah, it's a very, very valuable relationship that we do have, Daniel, and it's something that I really take as being something very, very solid. And it's certainly interesting sitting back in the Lewis household at nights when we have our discussions about rugby league, and if there's a point of conjecture that needs to be discussed. It's almost the case where Tracy's got the Acme Thunderer and she's down sitting in the middle of the room and doing a bit of refereeing here at home. But his knowledge of the game is amazing. He would be one of the first people I would go to if I have a question about the game for a young man involved in such a high level of sport. So I appreciate his knowledge that he has at the present moment as a 29-year-old. So it's quite incredible.
I think that knowledge is equally matched by his passion for the game. No one loves it more.
No question about that. He loves the game incredibly, and he's a very, very good person to talk to about the game when you want a bit of a common sense directive coming from it, and all that sort of stuff. So and the skills that he's picked up on the way in respect to filling that role are incredible. Yep.
So before we finish with our Fast Five either or, I just wanted to get your perspective. It's a time where we're missing the game, no involvement at this stage or limited involvement. It's a good time to reflect on what the game has given us. What's the biggest benefit that Mick Lewis has got out of refereeing in rugby league?
The biggest benefit that it's given me, I think, the opportunity to meet people, Daniel, who I regard so highly from the sport, and who I still take great delight in being able to converse with about the game. I think the opportunities that the game has given me, as in the sport, throughout not just the first grade career, but through my entire career, has been something that I'll always look back on with a great delight. And I make no question about the fact I love rugby league, so I'm very, very lucky to have been involved in it in such a heavy way.
Yep. All right, a few rapid ones to finish off. Tomato or barbecue sauce?
Tomato.
Ford or Holden?
Definitely Holden, because I'm driving a Holden at the present moment.
Okay. State of Origin or Grand Final?
Grand Final. I think because of the fact I would have thought in my complicated head that I would never, ever have been good enough to referee State of Origin. So as a result, to referee a Grand Final is definitely a highlight.
Beach or snow?
I'm definitely a beach person. I love the beach, which is totally different to my wife, who loves the snow.
And last one, money or free time?
Probably free time. I like the opportunity. You asked me earlier what's been one of the good things about this holiday. Having some free time and being able to spend that with Tracy in particular has been invaluable.
Yep. All right, thanks, Mick. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you this afternoon. It's been very informative, and it's good to see from the different sides and different perspectives of the game.
Thanks, Daniel. Appreciate your time and really appreciate it.
Make sure you look after Tracy and enjoy those FaceTime meetings with Samantha and Mitchell.
I shall do that without any worries at all. And you look after yourself and take care as well.
Will do.